From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefanía Bravo, and this is From the South. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro has given a press conference in which he accused the United States of plotting a new attack against him and his government. Speaking from Miraflores Palace, Maduro also said that U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton led the assassination attempt against him in August with the assistance from the Colombian President Iván Duque, which hoped to facilitate a coup d'etat.
Now,
a denunciar
I come again
el complot
to
que desde la Casa
condemn
Blanca
that
se
plot
prepara
prepared
para
from the White House
violentar la democracia venezolana,
to attack
para
democracy in
asesinarme
Venezuela,
y para imponer
to
un gobierno
assassinate
dictatorial en
me,
Venezuela.
and to impose a dictatorial government in Venezuela.
Ha sido asignado
It
el señor
was
John Bolton nuevamente
John Bolton
como
was
jefe del
assigned
plan del
as the head
complot para
of
llenar de
this
violencia a
plan
Venezuela
to bring
y para
violence to
buscar una
Venezuela
intervención militar extranjera,
and to
un
seek
golpe de
a
Estado,
foreign
asesinar
military
al presidente Maduro e
intervention
imponer lo que llaman ellos
with a plan to
un
assassinate
consejo de
Maduro
gobierno transitorio.
and impose a
Lo estoy diciendo.
transitional government council.
British Prime Minister Theresa May has just arrived to Downing Street, this to wait for the results on the vote of no confidence triggered by the members of her Conservative Party. The results are expected for 9 p.m. local time. Potential candidates to replace her include the former Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, the Home Secretary Sajid Javid, and the Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt, among others. The President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, has intensified talks with the EU leaders after British Prime Minister Theresa May's speech in the Parliament. The EU is concerned about the Brexit deal following the leadership crisis in the UK. The spokesperson of the European Commission said Juncker has been closely watching the political situation in the country. May and EU leaders met a day after she postponed the Brexit vote in the Parliament.
President Juncker met with Prime Minister May here in the Parlement. Prime Minister May came to explain the situation in the United Kingdom and laid out the concerns as raised by the House of Commons, which she told us would like to address in cooperation with her fellow EU leaders and institutions. President Juncker listened to these concerns attentively.
Around 100 anti-Brexit young supporters have gathered outside the British Parliament in London. Disappointed with their politicians for leading them into a political crisis, they say they expect more from their representatives. Protesters have been demanding a new voting on Brexit deal.
I think if you look at the drama that's going on inside Parliament today, it's clear that there's absolutely no majority for any form of Brexit inside Parliament, and realistically the only way that we're going to solve this as a country and actually move on with the best interests of future generations is to take the conversation back to the people where it started in 2016.
Our correspondent in London, Pablo Navarrete, brings us more details from the growing political instability in the country.
British Prime Minister Theresa May has vowed to contest a vote of no confidence that will be taking place in a couple of hours in the British Parliament by members of her own party, who this morning, the influential Backbench Committee 1922 committee, announced that it had received 48 letters from Conservative MPs to initiate this process. Now, for this to happen, 15% of Conservative MPs had to, at least 15% had to submit letters. There are 316 MPs, which means that 48 was the minimum threshold. So this evening, Theresa May, in order to survive as leader of the Conservative Party, she will have to get half of that number plus one to survive. If she does, it means that the Conservatives cannot attempt another vote of no confidence within a 12-month period. Now, this has been the result of Theresa May's Brexit position, which has been deeply unpopular within her party, especially by the pro-Brexit wing, which has seen it as effectively a betrayal of what they see should have been Britain's stance or the terms of Britain's exit from the European Union, which has to take place by the 29th of March. Now, Theresa May has warned her colleagues that should they vote her out, that Brexit might be delayed or even postponed. She has also warned that voting her out will favour and strengthen the move to make Jeremy Corbyn the socialist leader of the Labour Party, the next British Prime Minister, something that unites that really there is a fear in the British establishment across even members of the Labour Party who are against Jeremy Corbyn's leadership. So there is a very strong feeling amongst the British political class that this should be avoided, and this might work in Theresa May's favour. According to The Guardian, about 150 Tories Conservatives have already said they'll be voting for her, but it is a secret ballot, so it remains to be seen whether this actually happens. So in a couple of hours, Theresa May will know whether she will remain as leader of the Conservative Party. What is clear, though, is that Britain's exit from the European Union has been a shambles, if we're honest, and this is the latest chapter in the upheaval that Brexit has caused the British politics.
We thank Pablo Navarrete for that report. Bolivian President Evo Morales has condemned a fire set by protesters to an electoral court in the department of Santa Cruz. Opposition supporters and students from the University of Gabriel René Moreno were protesting against Morales and his plans to run for re-election. According to the government, these events compared to 2008 opposition groups attempted a coup against President Morales. The Vice Minister of Interior, José Luis Quiroga, also denounced violence and said they were an attack on democracy.
We need to stop these acts of violence. That's what the police has been ordered to do, and to begin investigations. This group of delinquents receiving orders by the political opposition needs to be identified. This was a planned action and covered as false peaceful actions. But their real plan is to create violence, take over institutions, and destroy democracy in Bolivia.
Our correspondent in La Paz, Freddy Morales, reports on these events.
Cabinet Chief Carlos Romero told the media that the violence event in Santa Cruz on Tuesday were fascist crimes. It all began last Thursday in the city of La Paz, when opposition groups tried to attack police officers stationed at the headquarters of the Electoral Court. That same day, one death was recorded in the city of Riberalta, in the north. This, as opposition groups were trying to force citizens to take part in the strike. They were protesting the nomination of President Evo Morales and his Vice President Álvaro García Lineras as presidential candidates for 2019 general elections. These demonstrations are organized by all opposition interests. Despite this, the situation in the country remains normal.
Bolivia is boosting new actions to strengthen policies aimed at reaching gender equality and the end of violence against women.
Achievements in social policies, particularly in the last decade, have managed to improve the situation of millions of people, among them women.
In 2005, population with an average income reached 3.3 million people. That amounts to 35%. Our distribution of the income was a pyramid. People with lower incomes was the base, with 61% of the population. In 2017, what we have is that the middle class has grown up in more than 3 million people, and now it represents the 58% of the population.
The nationalization of strategic companies like hydrocarbons gave economic strength to the state and also to the redistribution of the wealth of the country, with 3 permanent bonuses.
Conditioned transfers are the core of the social policy. We have the Juancito Pinto bonus, the Juana Azurduy bonus, and the pension fund, Renta Dignidad, that benefits 5.4 million people that represent 49% of the Bolivians.
Besides the redistribution of the state income, there are specific laws that protect women and children, but are still insufficient to face the machismo problems that led to domestic violence.
We have released a survey on the prevalence of violence against women. We have been working under different guidelines: physical, psychological, sexual, economic violence, from which 7 out of 10 women suffer from kind of violence. 60% of these women are from rural areas.
This meeting between authorities and representatives from social sectors seek not only more resources from the state, but also a balanced distribution.
It is important that women are at the center of these issues, with shared experiences in which they tell us how in the distribution of resources we can bring a wider view, a gender view.
With this purpose, the government created a cabinet of 7 ministers and a special office to move forward on gender equality. 1,500 women from the rural area and small populations have been chosen as communal promoters. One of their main jobs is to report gender violence.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has signed a bill to withdraw the education reform proposed by his predecessor, Enrique Peña Nieto. López Obrador said he wants to replace the reform for a new initiative which guarantees free education for all. He added the new reform also includes a parents and teachers pact. The proposal will now be sent to Congress for its approval. Our correspondent in Mexico, Eduardo Martinez, has more on this.
Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has proposed and signed an education bill, which will be sent today to Congress. This bill will cancel the modifications made to the third article in the Constitution during the previous government. AMLO said he's canceling the modifications known as educative reform. He made a compromise with Mexican teachers of canceling this bill, which provoked protests and mobilizations by Mexican teachers. The previous education reform imposed a general evaluation for all teachers, including those in rural areas. Many of the teachers who participated in the demonstrations were fired. Students and parents also joined the discussions.
And around 100 migrants have marched to the U.S. consulate in Tijuana to deliver a petition requesting their asylum claims be processed faster. Migrants holding flags of their native countries in Latin America walked along a highway to get to the consulate. They were stopped outside by Mexican police with riot gear.
We're only asking that they accelerate the process, that more people are able to pass through each day. That's all we're asking, and that, for us to apply for asylum, the same people from the government evaluate us and decide who really gets political asylum.
And the Mexican government has announced that it will provide thousands of humanitarian and working visas to Central American migrants. The government has already handed out 600 visas to members of the migrant caravan currently waiting at the U.S. border with Mexico. With this document, migrants will be able to access social and employment services. According to the United Nations, a total of 7,000 migrants have left their countries in large groups over the last few months. Ecuadorian President Lenín Moreno and his Chinese counterpart have held talks in Beijing to strengthen ties. Moreno and Xi Jinping agreed that Ecuador will become a new Latin American stop for China's Belt and Road Initiative, a commercial and infrastructure development strategy. Both countries will also strengthen ties in sectors such as agriculture, new energy, and environmental protection. Panamanian farmers being evicted from the land they've occupied for decades have filed a criminal complaint against the president. The government intends to give a banana-producing company hundreds of hectares for large-scale cultivation and production.
This is Marvin. For more than 20 years, he's outgrown bananas on these lands. But he says, a few days ago, police cut down almost all of his trees. He says it's a heartless ploy to force him off the land, to make way for the Bana Piña company to start production and export of bananas.
We are probably talking about 500 banana plants and more than 100 avocado trees that were destroyed. That was a clear message sent to the lead producers in the region. The same thing is going to happen to everyone else.
These lands are part of the almost 6,000 hectares the government has signed over to Bana Piña, a subsidiary of the Del Monte company. The land was once occupied by the Chiquita Company that left in 2003. It was a move that led to hardship and poverty.
I feel a great sense of sorrow after we've struggled for this land, and now they are evicting us, just like that. For almost 20 years we've been producing here, making a living out of it. It's also the people who buy and sell produce, and prices are often lower for everyone.
The producers and their families depend on these lands for their survival. Nearly 400 of them farm these sectors. Eviction means they lose their only means of subsistence. Many would also be rendered homeless.
I don't want to leave. I'm very hurt because I am also a Panamanian. This is where we live and they are forcing us out. Where are we going to live? We don't have anywhere to go, so we feel we have choice but to stay. I mean, we work here and we live here.
A group of producers have filed a criminal complaint against President Juan Carlos Varela before the General Secretariat of the National Assembly for the alleged violation of human rights and criminal code norms.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel says she is worried that the upcoming government in Brazil will jeopardize a trade deal between the EU and Mercosur. Merkel warns time is running out of the deal.
Yes, time is running out for an EU-Mercosur deal. That is to say, it should now happen very quickly, otherwise the deal will not be so easy to reach with the new government in Brazil. And of course, I am worried to see that Brazil will not be hosting the next global climate conference. I haven't had a chance to speak to the new Mexican president yet, but we'll try to do so very soon. All in all, America has to stay a good partner, and it will not be us that ruins it. But there are negative developments regarding multilateralism that I certainly regret.
A group of gay footballers in Brazil are showing their concern about the upcoming government of Jair Bolsonaro. They are vowing a campaign of resistance, but fear that 2019 may be a dark year for the LGBTI community. Gay footballers already face homophobia in this sport and say Bolsonaro's comments won't help them.
I think the upcoming future, 2019, will make us look towards resistance. When I say resistance, it's not about militarism or anything like that. It's about resisting in order to keep on existing.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Donald Trump's former attorney Michael Cohen has been sentenced to 3 years in prison. Cohen was sentenced for his role in the payment of hush money to women who said they had affairs with Donald Trump and for lying to Congress. Prosecutors argued that the hush money payments violated campaign finance laws. Cohen said the payments were directed by Trump, implicating him in a possible campaign finance law violation. He told court he felt obliged to cover up his client's dirty deeds.
Hello. Wow.
Meanwhile, attorney for Stormy Daniels, one of the women linked to the hush money payment, has described Cohen as neither a hero nor a patriot. He held little back as he waded into Cohen and his former client, Donald Trump.
He deserves every day of the 36-month sentence that he will serve. And I will also note with great irony, Michael Cohen will report to federal prison exactly 1 year after we filed the case on behalf of Stormy Daniels. Michael Cohen was sentenced today. Donald Trump is next.
The death toll in the attack in the French city of Strasbourg has risen to 3. 12 others were wounded. Police has identified the suspect as Sheriff Checat, a local who was on an intelligence service watch list as a potential security threat. The Paris prosecutor has confirmed security forces are still searching for him.
Considering the target, his way of operating, his profile, and the testimonies of those who heard him yell, Allahu Akbar, the anti-terrorist police were called into action last evening. The assailant left the area by taxi, which took him to the Neudorf district 10 minutes later. The taxi driver who was heard as a witness said the man had asked him to take him to that district without giving him an address, and that he would guide him there. The taxi driver added that he saw him carry a handgun and was wounded.
The Yellow Vest movement is now worried that authorities will use the Strasbourg attack to restrict their right to protest. Some are questioning how an individual with dozens of previous criminal convictions could have slipped through the French intelligence system. They say the government may use the attack to ban public gatherings.
I think it's going to stop the movement, or a few people will be violent, or will perform violent actions, and I don't agree with that.
How is it possible that a lone person, known by security services, who commits a crime and kills 3 people, injuring 12 more, can just disappear into nature, but we're tracked for nothing? That seems strange.
At least 2 people have died in the Democratic Republic of Congo after members of the Presidential Guard clashed with supporters of opposition candidate Martin Fayulus. The confrontations took place in the country's 2nd largest city when the Presidential Guard tried to block Fayulus' convoy from entering the venue for a scheduled campaign rally. There has been fear of violence ahead of the December 23rd election, when voters will choose a new president. Rwanda's government will appeal the court ruling that acquitted opposition leader Diane Rwigara of forgery and inciting insurrection. The Attorney General says the government believes the High Court is ignoring evidence. Prosecutors had sought a 22-year jail sentence for Rwigara, a fierce critic of President Paul Kagame. Clashes between rival political parties have left 2 dead in Bangladesh. More on that and other stories from around the world.
Two people have been killed in pre-election clashes in Bangladesh weeks before the country goes to polls. Around 100 people have also been injured. Supporters of the ruling Awami League Party and the opposition party Bangladesh Nationalist Party clashed during a political campaign. The police said they have launched criminal case against 45 people. Egyptian authorities have restricted the sale of yellow vest, fearing people might copy the French yellow vest protests ahead of the anniversary of the 2011 uprising next month. A lawyer was arrested for posting a picture of him wearing a yellow vest similar to those worn by protesters in France. He has been given a 15-day detention on allegation of incitement. The United Nations Special Representative for International Migration has described the Migration Pact as based on facts and not on myths in her end note at the conference in Morocco. Signed by over 160 members, the pact has been billed as the first international document on managing migration. The pact lays out 23 objectives to open up legal migration and discourage illegal border crossings.
Do listen to the Secretary General's dispelling of the myths about this compact. It is not correct to suggest that this compact imposes obligations on member states and infringes on their sovereignty. It does nothing of the sort, and it is not binding as a treaty would have been. It does not create a right to migrate.
The 2018 Nobel Peace Prize winner Nadia Murad has called on Iraq to act for all regardless of religion, ethnicity and language, as she says all were victims of terrorism from the Islamic State. Murad attended an official reception ceremony in Baghdad, her first visit to her country since the Nobel win. President Brahim Salih and other senior officials were also present to honor her.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Stefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.